Welcome to the first episode in a Legendarium series about the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire. The first episode is called The Last Crusaders. We'll be talking about the rise of the Ottoman Empire and how they took southern Europe from the East Roman Empire, making it a doomed inheritance for Emperor John VIII. John VIII tried to save his empire by starting a new crusade, which was led by Janos Hunyadi of Hungary, who led Christian forces at the battles of Varna and Kosovo. However, his failure to defeat the Turks meant the beginning of the end for the Eastern Roman Empire. While the date of Rome's fall is often given as 476, it lasted until 1453. Late in Rome's history, the empire was split in two. While the West fell, the East survived through 1,000 years of declines and revivals. However, their lowest point came during the Fourth Crusade in 1204, when Crusaders, sent to help the Christian Eastern Romans against the Muslim Turks, instead invaded and ransacked the wealthy city of Constantinople, taking both riches back to Europe and the throne for themselves. It would be over 3 generations before the Eastern Romans drove the Crusaders out and retook their capital city. By then, the empire was too weak and shrunken to face its new and more dangerous enemy, a group of nomadic Turks in Asia Minor, which was then ruled by the Mongols. These Turks developed a military machine under their first ruler, Osman, a man famous for eating plainly, living among his own men, and shoeing his own horse. Osman personally led his subjects in battle, fighting on small, fast-moving horses and showering the Mongol enemy with arrows. In time, Osman's tactics drove off not only the Mongols, but enabled him to carry out hit-and-run raids against Eastern Roman towns in Turkey. Osman generously shared the booty and slaves taken from these wars to grow his army and push the Eastern Romans out of Turkey. In time, these Turks would call themselves Osmanlis, or followers of Osman, and when translated into Greek, they became Ottomans. Osman's son and successor Orhan expanded his father's war machine to include siege equipment, and he took the city of Bursa as the first Ottoman capital. The former nomads settled down and became farmers and tradesmen in their new home city of Bursa. Meanwhile, the Eastern Roman emperors faced challenges not only from the Turks, but rivals within their own empire. During the 1350s, Ottomans intervened in these civil wars on the side of one Roman faction or another. In fact, they used this as a chance to seize more land in Europe at the expense of the Eastern Roman Empire. At first, Ottoman conquest often meant lower taxes and religious tolerance, so the people of southern Europe welcomed them as liberators. However, Turkish officials soon began coming into the villages and using Christians as a source of manpower. Whenever Turkish officials entered a Christian village, they ordered the boys to line up and inspected them one by one. They chose the strongest-looking Christian boys to serve in Europe's first standing army as Janissaries. Whenever officers arrived, panic spread through Christian communities. Parents begged priests to delete their sons' names from village registers, and they married sons off as young as 12 years old to take advantage of a marriage exemption. However, these new troops would not be retaking Constantinople, but rebuilding Ottoman power in Asia, which had been devastated by the Timurid Mongols. This distraction did give the Eastern Roman Empire one more generation of life. However, by the year 1425, John VIII Palaeologus became the sole ruler of the Eastern Roman Empire, which by then was a doomed inheritance. By that time, little remained of the Eastern Roman Empire except the area around Constantinople, a colony in the Greek Peloponnesus called the Despotate of Morea, and a few districts on the Black Sea coast called the Empire of Trebizond. Constantinople was a shadow of its former glory. The population of the city, which peaked at 1 million hundreds of years ago, was now only about 50,000. Large areas of the city had been abandoned, with buildings torn down to use once prime real estate for farming. The city's 12 miles of triple walls, location by the sea, and the use of Greek fire, effectively medieval napalm, on enemy ships made it possible to defend the capital, but the Eastern Roman Empire had a harder and harder time finding enough troops to man the walls. Yet it could still generate revenue by taxing the Black Sea trade, which went through the critical waterways between Greece and Turkey. Upon becoming emperor, John continued the Palaeogolan tradition of appointing royal kinsmen to govern the empire's far-flung outposts, specks on the map that were still the Byzantine Empire. And Emperor John named his favorite brother Constantine the despot of Morea, and charged him with retaking the petty kingdoms still held by descendants of invaders from the Fourth Crusade. Constantine attacked and seized Glorenza in 1428, cementing his power by marrying the Glorenzan ruler's niece. Within a couple of years, Constantine had conquered Patra and Thebes. For the first time since the Fourth Crusade, the whole of the Peloponnesus was ruled by Constantinople. For a time, it looked as if the East Roman Empire might begin another cycle of revival. Yet in the blink of an eye, the Turks reversed the East Romans' progress, sending their janissaries to seize the Greek town of Thessalonica, putting the whole enterprise of Morea at risk. Emperor John turned to the west for help, sending off letters to the kings of England and France, along with the Pope in Rome. His efforts bore fruit in 1437, when he traveled to Italy and convened a council at Ferrara, Florence. Out of political desperation, he ended the 400-year schism between the Roman and Eastern Roman churches. He accepted the Pope's positions on many doctrinal matters, including purgatory and the primacy of the Pope. Needless to say, this did not please his subjects, faithful members of the East Roman Church, and it annoyed members of the East Roman clergy even more. Despite that, the Pope did call for a pan-European crusade to save what remained of the East Roman Empire. In addition, John's visit became a seminal event for the Italian Renaissance. Italian artists like Benozzo Gozzoli painted splendid portraits of Emperor John and his entourage. The scholars who traveled with Emperor John gave their Italian counterparts access to ancient Greek manuscripts that few outside Constantinople ever saw before. And even better, the Pope helped to negotiate peace between Poland and the Habsburgs, which freed up the Hungarians to turn their attention to the Turks. King Sigismund, a hardy warrior king, sent his favorite soldier, Janos Hunyadi, to take command of the Turkish frontier. He would have his work cut out for him. In June 1439, Sultan Murad laid siege to the Serbian castle at Zendro. The Serbian despot, Dorad Brankovic, fled to Hungary while leaving the defense of Castle Zendro to his sons. In August 1439, Castle Zendro fell, and Sultan Murad captured and blinded the sons of Brankovic, ensuring they would never be able to take their father's throne. However, Janos Hunyadi embarked on a bold winter campaign, forcing his men to march through driving snow and bitter cold to seize Zendro in a shocking upset. By 1442, the Turks prepared a counterattack into Christian Transylvania, led by Mazid Pasha. Mazid's men devastated the Transylvanian countryside and took home so many Christian slaves that the Turks boasted that a beautiful girl sold for the price of a pair of boots. Hunyadi rushed to meet them, but was soon defeated. He only staved off disaster by rallying peasant volunteers, warning them that Christendom itself would be swept away by the Turks. Aware of who his most dangerous enemy was, Mazid told his men that Hunyadi wore a silver helmet, rode a white horse, carried a shield with a raven painted on it, and was always in the thick of battle. Warned that Mazid intended to seek him out and kill him, Hunyadi allowed a peasant volunteer named Simon Kemeny to wear his armor in battle. And while Kemeny was killed, Hunyadi used his sacrifice well. Hunyadi organized a counterattack and slaughtered so many Ottoman Turks that he sent a wagon load of severed heads to the Hungarian capital at Buda. Encouraged by Hunyadi's success, the kings of Poland and Hungary answered the Pope's call to arms, joined by the princes of Wallachia and Moldavia, along with the Christian ruler of Albania, Skanderberg. The plan called for Polish and Hungarian crusaders to invade overland, while Venetian and Papal fleets cut off Ottoman reinforcements from Asia. The promised naval blockade never arrived, and by the time the Crusaders arrived in Varna, it faced a much larger Ottoman army than expected. Hunyadi focused on a defensive strategy, and withstood the first Ottoman charges. However, King Władysław of Poland ignored Hunyadi's advice to stay on the defensive, and led a bold but disastrous cavalry charge aimed at capturing the Sultan himself. Polish nobles must have made for an imposing sight, wearing wooden wings decorated with eagle and goose feathers that made a hissing sound as they charged on their horses. That didn't help them against the Turkish infantry, who slaughtered them, killed King Władysław, and mounted his head on a pike. The Crusaders retreated from Varna, leaving as many as 50,000 dead on the battlefield. The death of King Władysław triggered a civil war for the throne in Poland, which removed the Poles from the war. However, the Ottomans faced resistance not only from Janos Hunyadi in Hungary, but Skanderberg in Albania. Skanderberg sent letters to both the Pope and the European monarchs asking for a new crusade, but since no one was interested, he could do little except carry out raids into Ottoman territory. However, Skanderberg did a remarkable job of holding the line, defeating the Ottoman Empire in 3 separate battles between 1445 and 1448. Yet it's worth noting that Skanderberg was successful because Turkish attention was divided. Sultan Murad himself was concerned about one of the few remaining outposts of Eastern Roman power, the Despotate of Morea in Greece. He forced the future Eastern Roman Emperor and despot of Morea, Constantine, to pay him tribute and become an Ottoman vassal, splitting the East Roman Empire. In September 1448, Hunyadi tried to relieve Morea by raising an army of 30,000 crusaders. He hoped that Durad Brankovic, the despot of Serbia, would join him. However, Brankovic, who swore allegiance to the Ottoman Sultan, refused to do so, so Hunyadi raided his lands and then made his way south into Ottoman territory, hoping to meet up with Skanderberg in Albania. However, Murad intercepted him, and the Hungarians and Turks met at the Second Battle of Kosovo in 1448. About 50 years earlier, at the First Battle of Kosovo, the Ottoman Turks had wiped out the Serbian Empire, which for a time looked as if it might replace the East Roman Empire as the main Christian power in southern Europe. Hunyadi led a force of Hungarians, Poles, and Moldavians against Sultan Murad's Turkish soldiers. Hunyadi placed his most heavily armored troops at the center and won some early successes. That night, Hunyadi sent his light cavalry to hit the Ottomans on their flanks, but they were driven off. Sultan Murad, showing some cunning, then sent away the cavalry which guarded his left and right flanks, tricking Hunyadi into attacking the remaining center of the Turkish army. And just as Hunyadi began making some progress and got within sight of Sultan Murad himself, the cavalry on the flanks returned and surrounded Hunyadi's army, slaughtering half of their number. Hunyadi was able to escape with the other half of the Crusader army and live to fight another day, but the Balkan Peninsula would be left under Turkish rule for the next 3 centuries. According to local lore, when Emperor John VIII of the East Roman Empire learned of the Crusaders' defeat at Kosovo, he died of grief. Indeed, if he knew what would soon befall his beloved city, then Emperor John had reason to grieve. Though Sultan Murad did not outlive Emperor John for long, his son Sultan Mehmet intended to pursue his father's long-cherished dream of taking Constantinople and ending the Eastern Roman Empire. And that wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you saw, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.